everyone, welcome to my channel. I apologize for not posting for a few days. I had serious work commitments and long commutes. There were lots of news coming out about Harry and Meghan, and I did not get a chance to cover any of it. But this podcast will only focus on one topic, and then later today, in my other podcast, I'll cover other topics. This podcast, as you saw with my title, is going to cover the demand for an apology by a pro Palestine group that Harry and Meghan sent a letter to last week. And GB News is the one that I'm going to reference here because surprisingly, their post online was straightforward news reporting. Who knew? So let's get started. Their title simply said Meghan Markle and Harry's Foundation issues emergency statement after pro Palestine group demands apology. And then it went on to say Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's Orchard Foundation has issued an emergency statement after a pro Palestine organization demanding an apology. The foundation had severed its relationship with the Milwaukee Muslim Women's Coalition, MMWC, following comments by its founder, Janan Nahib. Nahib described Israel as an quote apartheid state end quote and used the phrase quote from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free end quote in a blog post on the Wisconsin Muslim Journal. In addition, as reported by Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, a mural encompassing a Yahtzee propaganda was created by Nahid's brother, Hissan Atta. Orchard Foundation ceased making any future donation to the MMWC as a result, to which Nahib responded with an open letter to the foundation. She wrote, quote, "It is in that spirit that I write to express my deep disappointment regarding the Foundation's decision to revoke funding in response to an independent opinion piece I authored on Gaza, to suggest that the piece constitutes hate speech or propaganda is, at best, a profound misrepresentation." End quote. The organization leader concluded, quote, "Who you fund is ultimately your decision, but we ask that you retract your defamatory statements and issue a public apology, not to salvage our reputation, which remains pristine, but to salvage yours." With MMWC's proven track record, driven by Jewish, Muslim, and Christian staff, we are confident that more credible foundations and generous donors will continue to support this vital work. End quote. But overall, you heard how shady that letter was. And by the way, that video that you see playing in the background is an interview that that lady is doing. And in that interview, she said that tabloid type journalism had apparently contacted the Archwell Foundation. And so it is in an effort that they're using to silence them. So if she knows that tabloids are trying to silence them and she knows about tabloids, then she knows what Harry and Meghan are going through. So again, selfishness on these people's part. But let me continue. So Harry and Meghan's foundation has issued a statement, which I went over there to read, and it says, a statement from the executive directors, and it's dated April 18, 2025, and reads in full, saying, "At the Ottawa Foundation, we show up, do good. Our values are an extension of those of our founders, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Our funding and grant support extends to individuals and organizations of all walks of life with varying political views, cultural beliefs, ideologies, and identifications. We do not discriminate. We believe change comes from building bridges. We welcome all. We do not, however, tolerate any form of hate speech, including hate fueled symbols, language, or imagery, no matter the community it targets. For us, association with the blending of the Star of David with a swastika is impossible to accept. Additionally, language that calls for the destruction of others, whether explicitly or implicitly, crosses a line. It is not aligned with our values. We are pro humanity, pro love, pro peace, pro equality. Out of respect for all our partners, a responsibility to our donors, and in reflecting the values of our principles, we make adjustments to our future funding accordingly. We remain deeply committed to our work with Muslim led organizations and refugee support programs through the Welcome Project and relief effort in Gaza. That's the full statement, and it is authored by James Holt and Sean Annette, executive directors, the Archwell Foundation. So that is what the Archwell Foundation said, guys. And I'm going to go back over to GB News where they finished their coverage by saying, after Nahib's comments were brought to light, GB News understands that a letter was sent to MMWC and its founders last week. It is also understood that the Archwell Foundation has a zero tolerance policy towards hate speech and that the decision was based on the promotion of propaganda, not political views. GB News has contacted both Archwell and Jana Nahib for comment. So that is the total of GB News coverage on that story, guys. And I'm so shocked at how straightforward it is, for one thing. But let me go on and state my opinion on all of this that is happening. I have noticed that people, whenever Harry and Meghan make any decision, people seems to take those decisions and use it as a way to attack everything that Harry and Meghan is, whether it's their foundation or them personally. It seems that Harry and Meghan are not allowed in this world to make decisions that any other people would make without people using it as a reason, as a time now to threaten them, whether explicitly or implicitly. Harry and Meghan will do what any other sane person would do. Anybody with a well thinking thoughts or ideas will do, whether to protect themselves from abuse or protect their foundation for being associated with, as they said, the blending of the Star of David and a swastika. Is not on Harry and Meghan to have guarded from that. It is on those people that had that uh, charity to guard themselves for from things like that. Even in a normal environment, that wouldn't be acceptable. And for people to come out, I see that somebody across the pond is coming out and saying that they no longer support Harry and Meghan. You never did support Harry and Meghan. Anybody that tried to take support from Harry and Meghan for any decision they make in a time where Meghan can't even turn on comment on her Instagram, Meghan can't breathe without somebody having something to say, and not just random people, people with faces and titles and pens and platforms, legitimate platforms, are writing hit pieces, think pieces, long published pieces on Harry and Meghan, and especially Meghan. So anybody that says they're withdrawing their support from Harry and Meghan because of this, you never were a supporter. And as for Prince Harry, have they not heard about the campaign to deport this man? I mean, seriously, there's so much that Harry and Meghan have to face. And for the record, I fully support Harry and Meghan in this decision. With the Palestinian, everybody would know how people feel. I, as a person that looks like I do, I know where I stand. But in this case, how can somebody that is looking for funding behave in a way that can cease funding towards them? It's the same thing that we saw other Palestine group did during the election. They were out there with their full chests, behave in a manner that everyone with a clear thinking head knew that it was against their best interest. Harry and Meghan are getting heat from all corners, whether online, in print, on television, even shows that normally would report on things in a straightforward manner. When it comes to Harry and Meghan, and especially Meghan, they seems to lose their minds. The same thing with the Archwell Foundation. They miss a check and turned out they didn't, but it was a clerical error and it made news across the world like that has never happened. And it's a normal, everyday issue that happens across the board. So everything that Harry and Meghan do is scrutinized to the upteenth degree. And for somebody knowing the fire they're in and wanting them to stick themselves in more fire is unconscionable. And as I've seen in a lot these days, and I said during this fraught time, is that many groups want to just focus on their pain. So I see groups that want to do things that they say is in their best interest. They do not consider other people in those interests, right? So if this MMWC was even thinking of the best interest of not just her group, but Archwell Foundation, regardless of the fact that Archwell Foundation withdrew funding, but they knew and take ownership of the fact that their views, their opinions are their opinions, they stand by it, but they respect the fact that Archwell Foundation and Harry and Meghan cannot stand by those views and move on. But it seems as if everybody and all these groups of people just recognize their own pain. They will not acknowledge anybody else's suffering, anybody else's pain, anybody else's situation that they're going through. So if this organization was not just thinking of its own self interest, they could have taken this letter and said, we do not agree with you, but we understand where you're coming from. Because MMWC should have said, we stand 10 toes deep in our opinion, but we understand why you can't join us on this fight at the moment and keep it moving. That is what I think, if they're so steadfast in how they think and say their reputation is pristine. So they prefer to keep their reputations pristine, but sully the reputation of Archwell. So it tracks in how I've seen a lot of groups behaving, but this is what I'm seeing in a lot of areas right now. But anyway, guys, I've gone on a tangent. Thank you so much for joining me. Please let me know your opinions. I will come back to you later with a podcast that covers other topics, but I wanted to bring this to you separately. Talk to you soon. Bye.